Welcome to Balance4Blue, Zen4Blue's official podcast, learning about all things marine careers. Today, I am joined by David Franklin, Stormwater Management Consultant and Conservationist at Large. David, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Hannah, for having me today.
I'm so lucky to have you. You have a very interesting marine career because you are working with the oceans, but not in the ocean. Can you tell me more about stormwater management?
Sure. You know, oceans are part of the waters of the US, right? And so we have all these waters that drain into the ocean and the marine life that's impacted. And it turns out that the rainfall kind of makes up all the flowing water that goes to the ocean. So I work in the area of, well, rainfall or storm water that impacts the quality of our oceans.
Yeah, I mean, it's a direct impact. When you think about the water cycle, everything is flowing to and from the oceans.
When the Clean Water Act was first enacted in the early 70s, they they focused on factories and sewage plants that were known to be dumping a lot of wicked stuff into the waterways, right? But it took
Yeah.
them a long time to figure out that the stormwater falling from the skies onto the dirty cities was carrying a lot of bad stuff to the ocean also. So it took 15 years of studies from 72 to 87 to figure out that stormwater needed to have rules also.
I'm happy it does. Can you describe what someone in stormwater management actually does? Like, what does a day in the life of your job look like?
Well, over the years, it's changed a little bit. Initially, I focused on erosion control. I was a contractor that did erosion control, which is, a lot of things, spraying seeds on the ground so that the soil doesn't wash away. But now, through time, I became more of a consultant and trainer. So I do a lot of training and also troubleshooting. It's kind of cool to be able to troubleshoot on industrial sites or municipal sites or construction sites and figure out how to fix problems of all different sorts.
What is a problem you see in a lot of industrial sites that you, as a stormwater management consultant, can fix?
Well, and the first thing that came to my mind when you asked that was there's so many things we can't fix. And there's so much that's ubiquitous everywhere. Like an industrial facility has to control maybe the iron coming off their facility. Well, there's iron in the gravel parking lot. And the gravel parking lot is not an industrial activity, it's just a parking lot. Industrial activity would be sand blasting a boiler for agricultural operations. Well, you could have iron coming off of the parking lot or the sandblasting of the boiler. And the industrial facility might get, held accountable for just a regular gravel parking lot that we have everywhere. And so there's a challenge there, knowing how to identify what the source of the pollution is and what can be done about it and what things you're not really supposed to have to do something about.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
So, what things are just baseline pollution that's hard to control, and what things can be,
we don't have to fix
controlled a little
everything.
bit?
Yeah, we don't have to fix everything. And some things, man does have an impact, but nature has an ability to repair. And we're trying not to have any situation where nature can't handle the human impact.
That's interesting. So, it's less erasing human impact and more finding a balance.
In a way, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, that's what I do, a lot of training and, training people in municipalities or construction or industry, and with a common theme of stormwater management. And stormwater is the raindrops hitting the ground and carrying whatever to the oceans. And a lot of solutions and a lot of things to think about.
What is someone who wants to train in stormwater management? What should they expect? What does that training look like? I'm interested.
Well, a lot of what the industrial and construction world requires in California is essentially 3 days of training for industrial and 3 days of training for construction. And that's kind of the baseline. There are actually other add-ons that are commonly expected to of a more extended, in-depth nature. But so it's quite intensive. You have to have prior experience, like on the job, and then you have to have this focused training of 2 or 3 days, or maybe up to 5 days in some cases. Yeah. So
And what does that on the job training look like? Is that previous experience as stormwater management, or does that look like being on the job in an industrial facility that um, deals with pollution?
yeah, it could be a wide range. Sometimes a contractor will have to put in certain practices to control sediment. And so you might start off as a laborer, somebody who puts in those practices according to a plan, according to being trained by the boss. And so you start getting exposure to these practices. And other people are trained to be taking samples for analysis. So they might be get training there. Other people might be trained at their entry level job to be an inspector looking for compliance with what has to be done and reported on. So there could be inspecting, installing, sampling, and even more than that.
That's
Yeah,
exciting. So there's such a wide range of how people can get involved in stormwater management.
that's true. I often mention that it's a wide range of topics that you have to learn, knowing about soil science, horticulture, physical science, chemistry, calculations, and let's even say some diplomacy, because you're dealing with other people. You have to be an understudy in acronyms, of course, because we got lots of acronyms, and erosion control, materials. Like there are all kinds of materials, and some materials we don't want to use, like plastic. A lot of the industry has created all these plastic solutions. And who needs a bunch of plastic, right? I mean, that's the problem. We got a lot of plastic. And then it gets abandoned and it's, catching snakes because it's like netting plastic that's used for erosion blankets. And, and so we got to stop using that stuff. So that's one of the things we train on, is to have less plastic in our solutions and our materials and our products. And you got to know a little bit about contracting law and how to, conceptually design a scenario and maintain a scenario, repair these practices, and inspect. And I like to say you should be trained in being slow to conclude, because I've often noticed that people who jump into this business, they just start reaching conclusions so fast. I can't believe it. Like when I do my class each week, I have a couple of slides in which I tell everybody, okay, no conclusions. We're just looking at the picture and describing what we see such that nobody can argue with you. I see chocolate looking water washing off the site. That looks like chocolate water to everybody. There's no disputing it. It's chocolate looking water. Well, now somebody else might come along and reach all kinds of conclusions. Well, you know, I need more research before I can say where it's coming from, who's to blame, what the solution is, and on and on. So it's really a big deal in my mind to be slow to the conclusion. That's a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah. Taking time, being patient, and being observant.
Yes, which ties into my other favorite diatribe, critical thinking. I like the idea because I had a really good student and you know everything I know I like to say that everything I know is from each week's class. Somebody teaches me something new, so I'm really not a smart person. I'm just a person who collects information from the smart people, and I learn how to explain it and share it and connect it with other people, you know. But somebody asked a great question like a year ago. She said, so what do you think is most important thing in the business? And I said something on the line of being slow to conclusions and taking your time to really study the situation and come up with the real answer for this scenario. And she said, oh, so like, and I said, not rely on canned answers from the past, you know. And she said, oh, so like to be critical thinking. I said, yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for, critical thinking. Yeah, so that's a good idea, to revisit what you see freshly each time you see it. You thought you saw it last time, but no, this is a little bit different. Because think about it, a construction site, this chaotic, organized ballet of construction through time and rain and heat and wind, and different contractors coming and going, and excavations and building into the air and digging into the ground, and all of this madness that's so coordinated in a kind of interesting way. Construction, and then you get the weather thrown on there. So what we want to make sure is that we don't stop thinking about a new or different answer, and we got to avoid thinking that, oh, this is the same answer as last time, but it's not. It's a new day, it's a new scene.
I have never heard construction described as a chaotic, organized ballet.
There you go. And you memorize the phrase. That's pretty good.
Well, it's a good phrase.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
using
so.
that.
I haven't branded it yet.
Oh, trademark. Trademark that.
Yeah.
That's insightful. I think that's an insightful look into what it takes to be a stormwater management consultant and
Yeah.
what it takes to approach this job day to day. But what's also exciting about that is that that can be a learned skill. That's something that you said, that you teach patience. You teach, look at this slide, take a look, don't jump to conclusions.
Yes.
So that's something that you can learn while you're doing this. How does your job help prevent flood damage to communities? How does it protect marine ecosystems? What is stormwater management? How does that fit into our marine conservation?
The topic of flood is an interesting one, flood damage, because we've seen a lot of that, didn't we? Like what, South North Carolina recently, out near you, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. Major
flooding is,
damage in Appalachia.
yeah, flooding is real. And of course, we all know that people like to build near the water, and near the water it floods. But there is a reality, which is human impacts can increase the runoff, which means the flooding. And so the design standard that nationwide we're supposed to adhere to is a standard in which new construction, where pavement and roofs are built on a former forest, the forests, they really drink the rain. Like when I've been to the Amazon a few times, it was amazing to find out that it's not like a storm front blows in. The trees make the storm each day. They release the previous rainfall to make clouds to come crashing down again. It's just a cycle from the ground and trees into the air, back down, and then back up, which is pretty amazing. So, flooding is going to happen. We're trying to limit the man made flooding. So, our design standard is when you create new pavement and roofs, you have to have mitigations on your construction site to hold the increased runoff on site, where it will go into the ground and recharge the ground like it did when there was a forest there, recharging the groundwater. So we're supposed to not increase the discharge that finds its way to the creeks above the ground. It's okay if the groundwater finds its way to the creeks, but not if it runs off of new pavement. So we always want to have a design that puts the stormwater into the ground. And the interesting thing about that is controlling the quantity of the discharge helps to manage the quality of the stream flow. Because if you have less runoff from your new construction, then there will be less of the pollutants from the new construction going to the creek also. It goes into the ground, which is where we prefer any conventional pollutants to go to, so that the natural systems on site can break down those pollutants and not impact the water resources downstream all the way to the ocean. But so quantity and quality are in an interesting way connected. And the quantity is to speak to avoiding flooding, and the quality is to speak to avoiding the contamination of the water. But they work hand in hand.
Yeah, it sounds like they working hand in hand is an opportune phrase there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's working the whole way down. It's really
Yeah.
interesting to see how stormwater management can affect entire communities in a positive impact.
Yes. They now, the municipalities like to look at the stormwater as a resource, be utilized and protected and repurposed and so forth, in different ways.
Absolutely. Do you look at it as a resource?
Well, I do. 35 years ago when I moved out into the country here in West Marin, I paid $2,000 to somebody to dig a hole in the ground. And then I put my downspouts to feed the hole in the ground. And the hole in the ground attracted willows that blew in and sprouted, and frogs moved in. And suddenly I had a really cool pond with an island. And as the kids were growing up, they had a little Tom Sawyer raft there. And the frogs kept my daughter awake at night, and she would complain about those frogs. But it was a resource. We now have ducks out there and geese squawking and laying eggs. And so, yeah, the stormwater from that $2,000 hole in the ground 35 years ago, it was a bare looking dirt hole in the ground. And everybody thought I was crazy to be spending $2,000 on a hole in the ground. But now it's a gorgeous pond full of
It's a thriving
wildlife.
community.
Yeah. And that's kind of what a lot of our construction sites are supposed to do now when they design a new job, is to hold it on site.
It's to see. So I guess that's something that people might look at, like, what's the value of stormwater management? What's the value of this? The value is that when it's conserved well, and
Mm-hmm.
it builds communities, and it conserves ecosystems.
Communities of the flora and fauna, and then the people like to hang around as a community too, around the water body.
I am very interested in your company, Envirotech.
Yeah, well, the full name is like Envirotech NPDES Services, and that stands for National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, which is what the EPA put together as a program to protect our water bodies and prevent the discharge of pollutants. So it's Envirotech NPDS Services. I've worked mostly in California, but I do travel around the country, help out here and there. So mostly now I do trainings throughout the month. Yesterday I was at a really nice little city in California on the coast, and we had some great staff come in, and they've been learning their craft of pollution prevention, and we had a nice day of ongoing training and visited a job site. So I do training for municipalities, construction sites, municipal and industry. And so a lot of training and some consulting here and there, troubleshooting. I used to do a lot of specification writing and contracting and inspections and program development and all of that. But it's kind of fun to be winding down and making it more simple now and not so complex, you know.
Yeah. If someone is interested in training through Envirotech, what should they expect and how should they go about it?
You know, we put together a few years ago an interesting little series of trainings that are very entry level and inexpensive. And we came up with a name Project Eddie or Project Edie, as you might prefer. But it's just for the regular Eddie who, you know, wants to have a cool specialty career, a little niche. And this is like an interesting little specialty career that's growing and growing and growing. And there's so much compliance support that's needed across the whole spectrum of designing, installing, inspecting, training, and and so forth, that everyone should really feel comfortable jumping into it and getting their feet wet because I don't see any end in sight. There are going to be a lot of opportunities. So Project Eddie at the website, you know, which the website I should mention is stormwater management dot biz, like Bravo India Zulu. And so at that website, you can see the photo gallery, you can see our courses, you can see my original songs for enjoyment if you wanted to. And so that's the website. And we have many different courses offered there that we do on Zoom or in person. Okay. So you can see the full list there.
Do you have anything that you feel is necessary to share with someone who is dead set and going into stormwater management?
Passion. Make sure you're passionate. And remember this, that the goal of the Clean Water Act and all these permits and all these plans and all these manuals, the goal is to prevent pollution from leaving your control. And if all of those sources I just cited have an error, well, don't forget to go back to square one, prevent pollution. Because those manuals and permits and plans and Clean Water Acts, they got written to prevent pollution of the waters we enjoy. If they say something with a good intention, but it's going to have a bad result in this moment, you don't have to do it because you have to prevent pollution. That's square one.
Go back to square one.
Go back to square one.
That is great advice. David, I am so happy that we got to talk today.
Yeah.
I've learned so much about your field.
Well, it was a pleasure talking with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of your podcasts come out in the months ahead.
Why, thank you. Where can people find you?
Well, you know, my website has my email address and phone number, and so they can always get me there at stormwatermanagement.biz. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, David, for coming on Balance for Blues and for Blues official podcast.
Thanks for having
Have a
me.
lovely day.